He tried to rape me again, and I tried to ask him to stop, and I shot him.
You shot him?
Yes, I shot him. I just kept shooting.
You shot him where?
I shot him all over. I didn't want to hurt him, but he wouldn't stop.
September 13th, 2013. This frantic call reached the Atlanta Police Department. The caller, 30-year-old Victoria Rickman, conveyed in an anguished tone that she had shot her boyfriend. Responding to the call, police arrived at a residence on Clifton Road in DeKalb County, Georgia, Atlanta, where they discovered the lifeless body of 30-year-old William Carter Jr., riddled with bullets and soaked in blood. So what was the truth behind this tragic event? Was it a clear-cut case of self-defense? Or was there more to the story than initially met the eye? Victoria, fondly known as Tori by her loved ones, entered into marriage at a young age. However, things didn't pan out the way she wanted. Her marital union ended in divorce after a few tumultuous years marked by allegations of abuse from both parties. There was a silver lining amidst this toil. Out of it came a son, who loved ones said was Victoria's pride and joy, and the center of her world.
Her son is her everything. Would even get outside, play football, getting dirty with him, everything.
In 2010, a few years following her divorce, Victoria embarked on a relationship with a local businessman, William Carter Jr. Much like Victoria, William was also divorced and had a kid of his own. The two met through mutual acquaintances and quickly formed a bond over shared interests. Their children, Victoria's son and William's daughter, were around the same age, which made things even easier.
He was good around his daughter, and she admired that about him. They had a lot of things in common.
Their relationship progressed steadily, reaching a point where Victoria and William became engaged and decided to move in together.
She wanted to have a family, be married again, and have that for her and her son.
However, the once promising relationship soon soured. Regular arguments became the norm, and before long, they were living separate lives.
It was just back and forth, just very toxic.
Well, I know it was on and off.
Victoria made troubling allegations against William, accusing him of being abusive towards her. She recounted incidents where he allegedly resorted to physical violence, leaving visible marks on her body.
He always said he was sorry. He begged me for forgiveness, said he'd go to therapy.
Victoria's distressing experiences didn't go unnoticed by her friends, who grew increasingly concerned about her safety as she confided in them about the altercations.
I've witnessed some bruisings, for sure, after some altercations.
She finally started showing me bruises and stuff on her. And I told her, I said, you need to document this, because if something happens to you, no one's gonna know.
During their turbulent 3-year relationship, Victoria and William accumulated numerous police reports against each other, documenting a range of incidents from domestic disputes to allegations of assault and battery. But no matter how bad things got, they somehow always found a way back to each other.
I look back on it now and I'm like, how could I have been so stupid? How could I have been so forgiving? What's wrong with me to make me go back to that?
However, on that fateful September day, it all came to a head. At around 2:30 a.m. on September 13th, 2013, Victoria Rickman called the Atlanta Police Department to report that she had shot her boyfriend, William Carter, in self-defense after he attacked and assaulted her in a frenzied rage.
He tried to rape me again, and I tried to ask him to stop, and I shot him.
You shot him?
Victoria also said that she didn't mean to kill him, but she had to protect herself.
Yes, I shot him. I just kept shooting.
You shot him where?
I shot him all over. I didn't want to hurt him, but he wouldn't stop.
The responding officers rushed over to her place on Clifton Road in Atlanta, Georgia. The lead detective, Summer Benton, was a highly respected member of the Atlanta Police Department, having been a part of 65 homicide cases. When Benton was first informed about Victoria's call, she gave her the benefit of the doubt.
I, of course, think this is going to probably be a self-defense case. She's got a rapist off the street. All I thought was, I want to shake her hand.
But the investigation was just starting. As Detective Benton and her team arrived at the scene, they were trailed by a television crew from the series Inside Homicide, capturing every moment of their investigation on camera. Right from the get-go, Detective Benton sensed that something wasn't right at the crime scene. Upon the officer's arrival, Victoria stood in the doorway wearing pajamas with wet hair, holding her small dog. She informed officers, "He raped me again, and I shot him." However, there were no apparent signs of injury on her. Additionally, the home appeared undisturbed, with nothing seeming out of place.
As soon as I stepped foot in that back bedroom, I knew we had a problem. There didn't appear to be any signs of disarray or a fight. Nothing looked like what it should have looked like.
Officers discovered William's body in the back bedroom of the house, lying on the bed with multiple gunshot wounds. He was naked, with his watch placed on the nightstand and a gold chain necklace held in his left hand. Nearby, his clothes were strewn on the floor, and a pair of Rickman's underwear was found wrapped around a used tampon. Following the discovery, William's body was transported to the medical examiner's office while Victoria was taken to Grady Hospital for physical examination and a kit. During her examination, she recounted to the treating physician that William had forced her into intercourse, followed by restraining and assaulting her. In an act of self-defense, she claimed to have grabbed a gun from the nightstand and shot him. However, the results of the examination raised doubts. Although vaginal swabbings matched a partial profile of William's DNA, the examining physician found no injuries on her consistent with her description of the events, nor any signs of trauma to her vaginal cavity. By the time Benton got wind of this, she was already side-eyeing Victoria's account. This skepticism was evident as Benton discussed the case with the prosecutor, a moment captured on the reality TV show.
Any indication from the hospital of any injury to her at all?
There's nothing. She has no scratches, no bruising. Bye.
Back at the scene of the crime, the cops found a total of 9 shell casings and 1 lone bullet scattered around the bedroom. The murder weapon, a .40 caliber semi-automatic firearm, was found inside the nightstand drawer on the side of the bed, farthest from William's body. Blood spatter was observed on the wall, floor, curtains, window, and a pillow on the floor. The state's crime scene expert analyzed the blood spatter patterns and determined that William was shot in the back while standing and facing the bedroom wall. He then fell onto the bed, where the remaining shots were fired.
We believe he was standing next to the bed facing the window when he was shot in the back 3 times, which then one of those shots filled his lungs with blood, which caused him to cough, causing the blood spray pattern on the wall next to the window. And then we believe he fell back onto the bed. As he's lying on the bed, she is then finishing him off, firing more shots into his chest.
An autopsy revealed that William was shot 9 times, 3 times in the chest, 3 times in the back, once in the arm, and twice in the head. 3 of the gunshot wounds showed evidence of stippling, indicating close-range firing, while the remaining 6 did not. Additionally, William bore bruises on his chin and left arm, likely inflicted by a blunt object. The medical examiner's verdict was clear. William Carter succumbed to the fatal consequences of his gunshot wounds. Meanwhile, after her hospital examination, Victoria faced an intense interrogation conducted by Detective Benton.
So you're saying you're willing to speak with me without an attorney present today?
I'll speak with you about some of the things you...
Throughout the interrogation, Victoria maintained her stance of self-defense, alleging William had a history of abuse towards her, and that this wasn't the first time William had laid hands on her. But each time, he had evaded consequences.
He had been very abusive and beaten and hurt me quite a few times, and backed off every time.
However, Victoria refused to disclose more without legal representation.
So I cannot ask you any questions.
She then underwent a thorough examination for injuries and was photographed as evidence.
Anything on your back? Just hold. There you go.
During a subsequent round of questioning, tensions flared when Victoria was asked to surrender her phone.
That's your phone. Have your phone. why are you fighting with me?
Because you're grabbing stuff out of my hand that's inappropriate.
Because it's evidence.
After a grueling interrogation, Victoria received the grim news. She was being arrested and charged with her boyfriend's murder, a mere 6.5 hours after the incident. Detective Benton noted Victoria's lack of emotion at the news. According to her, she didn't bat an eye.
I advised her that she's being arrested for murder, and she simply says, okay. No screaming up and down, I'm innocent, I didn't do this.
Was it shock or indifference that kept her expressionless? To crack the case wide open, detectives knew they had to dig deeper. While Victoria remained in custody, the investigation pressed forward. Like in many cases, the probing began right at the victim's doorstep, or in this case, his parents' doorstep. William James Carter and Cairo Chisholm Carter were reeling from the shock of their son's sudden death.
Hi, is this Mr. Carter? My name is Investigator Benton. I'm with the City of Atlanta Police Department. I've got some really bad news.
Right from the beginning, William's parents weren't buying Victoria's self-defense story.
Well, when she said this was a self-defense case, what was your reaction?
I mean, I about puked. I mean, it's like, no, it's not either.
In a chat with Detective Benton, William's father recounted a troubling episode involving his son in January 2012, more than a year prior. That day, William had arrived at his parents' residence, visibly injured and bleeding. He bore a wound to the back of his head and a bite mark on his shoulder. According to William Sr., his son claimed that during a heated altercation with Victoria, she had attacked him with a hammer and bitten him on the shoulder. Victoria didn't stop there either. She even told the officers she cracked William on the head with the hammer in self-defense and showed off bruises on her wrists as proof. But William wasn't having any of it. He insisted Victoria had simply gone crazy. Still, he wound up getting arrested and charged with battery and assault.
After that incident, he said if she'd have had a gun, she'd have killed you.
Despite warnings issued by his parents, William decided to patch things up with Victoria. But even his parents got a first-hand taste of Victoria's temper when they made it crystal clear that she wasn't welcome in their home.
2 weeks later, she's standing in our driveway with Will. So I said, can't ever come over here again. She just snapped. She got furious with me. And she said, you can't tell me what to do. She said, I have a gun. I know how to use it. It's like, whoa.
The charges against William were eventually dropped when Victoria came clean to prosecutors, admitting she had fabricated the assault claims. Unfortunately, their ugly fights didn't end there. In May 2013, Victoria forcefully entered William's home in Cobb County without permission, grabbed him by his gold necklace, and forcibly led him around the house, demanding to know who he had been speaking to. Despite William's effort to remove her from his home, she ran through the neighborhood alleging assault. Police intervention followed, and when they showed up, Victoria flipped the script, accusing William of assaulting her. This time, Victoria was the one getting slapped with handcuffs and tagged with battery charges. And those charges were still hanging over her head when William met his untimely end. To William's parents, it seemed that their son had fallen victim to a fatal attraction.
It's as if nobody could have done anything. He wouldn't listen to anybody about this.
His biggest flaw was that he couldn't see the evil in her.
Yet people on Victoria's side had something different to say. According to her friends, William was the true threat, a man who consistently subjected Victoria to abuse.
She went through some horrible things. This man abused her emotionally, physically, and sexually.
They claimed Victoria had even taken photos to document her bruises in the past.
I think the constant abuse that she was going through, she just could not take it anymore.
Victoria's dad, Paul Rickman, couldn't wrap his head around how his daughter wound up in such a mess.
Having known that she had been physically abused by him, I was shocked completely to even find out that he was there or that anything had happened.
However, Victoria's best friend, Brittany Morgan, was convinced that on that fateful night, Victoria was left with no other option.
That day, it was either her or him. I believe that with all my heart, because there's no way in the world that she would do that unless it was her life or his life.
Scrutiny also fell upon the murky history of William Carter. As it turned out, his past wasn't as squeaky clean as it seemed at first glance. Years back, he had a rap sheet peppered with arrests for property damage and drug-related offenses. Even his own parents acknowledged that he had struggled with drug addiction at one point.
Like what kind of drugs?
I don't know, you name it. The doctor said it was more than something like marijuana. It was dangerous.
After nearly a decade of battling addiction, he checked himself into rehab and made a complete turnaround in his life.
He actually overcame his addiction and started his own business.
I was extremely proud of Will, and he never gave up. He didn't give up on anything.
But was this troubled past enough evidence to support Victoria's claims of abuse? To Victoria's close circle of friends, it was more than enough. They firmly believed that she was desperately trying to escape from the toxic relationship. In fact, just 4 months before the fatal incident, in May 2013, Victoria took steps to seek a restraining order against William in Cobb County Court. Although the office was closed on that day, a sheriff's deputy named Frederick Price, who was working there, noticed her bruises and intervened. Concerned for her safety, Price provided her with a .40 caliber semi-automatic gun for protection.
She told me that her ex had beaten her and she needed a protective order.
He even took her to a gun range for practice, convinced that she was genuinely in danger.
He encouraged her to use that gun when it came to Will Carter.
Ironically, it was this very same gun that Victoria ended up using to fatally shoot her lover. As speculation swirled regarding which party had posed the greater threat, William or Victoria, the case became a focal point of controversy, dividing opinions and communities alike. Meanwhile, Victoria found herself confined to the DeKalb County Jail. The request for bail had been denied, and all she could do was wait for her day in court. Just when the dust seemed to settle, the reality TV show Inside Homicide dropped their own episode, delving deep into the story of Victoria Rickman and William Carter. The spotlight was mainly on Detective Summer Benton's investigation, painting a narrative that leaned heavily towards the notion of Victoria being guilty of a calculated murder, even before she faced trial and conviction. Victoria's friends and family were furious by what they perceived as bias and premature judgment portrayed by the television show.
How would you describe this show?
Just filled with lies.
She's claiming that she's
claiming when you haven't even got on the scene yet to know. You haven't even spoke with her. You don't even know what's happened yet.
They condemned it for its one-sided portrayal and criticized the lack of consent regarding Victoria's continuous filming, especially considering her alleged assault.
Looks like she was training to kill.
Wow. Please, give me a break. It just came across as what's going to make a good TV episode.
They feared that this footage being aired for public entertainment could seriously jeopardize Victoria's chances of receiving a fair trial. To provide Victoria with a platform to share her side of the story, reporter Erin Moriarty of 48 Hours arranged an interview with Victoria via an inmate video calling system before her murder trial. In the interview, Victoria stuck to her self-defense narrative, while also voicing her concerns about the investigation not being conducted thoroughly, and the detectives jumping to conclusions about her guilt too fast.
Everything was done for a TV show, and there was no real investigation. I'm innocent of the charges that are alleged against me. Unfortunately, I've been humiliated, dehumanized by the system publicly without my consent.
During the interview, Victoria made a startling revelation, claiming that on the night of the murder, William was acting erratically.
He had relapsed and was intoxicated, and it was a very, very, very scary situation.
Unfortunately, this claim couldn't be substantiated as Detective Benton never requested William's toxicology report following his death. Later, Benton admitted that as it was her first homicide case in DeKalb County, she was unaware of the different procedural requirements.
I had no idea that you have to specially request a victim's tox and blood alcohol. So even though they had taken his blood and held on to it, at some point they then disposed of it.
So it was destroyed? The blood was destroyed?
From my understanding, it was.
Victoria, however, didn't believe that was the case.
I think it's huge that she did not do an autopsy, knowing she was getting rid of evidence that was pertinent to my defense and to my innocence.
After spending nearly 4 years behind bars, Victoria's trial finally began on August 22, 2017. Much like the case itself, the trial proved to be anything but straightforward, with both sides presenting their evidence in an attempt to sway the jury. In the DeKalb County courtroom, defense lawyer Amanda Clark Palmer found herself going head-to-head with attorney Sheila Ross, renowned as one of Georgia's most formidable prosecutors. The stage was set for a legal battle of epic proportions. The prosecution opened by alleging that Victoria deliberately murdered her boyfriend in a premeditated act of violence.
The evidence will show that she did not shoot William Carter Jr. out of fear, but rather anger. He and this defendant were involved in what could only be described as an on-again, off-again, toxic relationship. Very Jerry Springerish. You'll hear a lot out of her mouth that she's an abused woman, that she has PTSD, that she has been. You'll hear the tears and you'll see the tears. So just be ready for it. But we're gonna ask that you look past that, and we're gonna ask that you render a verdict that speaks the truth of what happened to William Carter Jr. that night, which is nothing short of murder. Thank you.
In contrast, the defense argued that Victoria acted out of fear and self-defense, emphasizing killing William was never her intention.
This case is about domestic violence. He abused her physically, verbally, and emotionally. She felt like he was going to do something terrible to her, based on the way he was acting and based on the fact that he said, "I'm going to kill you."
Palmer also highlighted the traumatic impact of the biased investigation and the sensationalized TV show episode on the case.
And she's kind of like narrating what she's doing to the cameras. No one asks Victoria, who's just been raped, who's just shot and killed William Carter, defending herself, if she's okay being on TV. They just come over and start filming everything that's going on. And what happens next was a rush to judgment in this case. The police show up, they collect evidence. They're not as meticulous as I think they should have been. She was justified in defending herself, she was in fear for her life, and she's not guilty.
During the second day of the trial, Detective Benton took the stand, reiterating her belief that there was no evidence of a struggle at the crime scene.
Did you observe any forced entry into the home?
No, I did not.
Were there any injuries to her face?
No, there were not.
Was her bra torn in any way?
No, it was not.
Did you look for signs of a struggle?
I was unable to find that there were any signs of a struggle.
However, the defense countered this statement, presenting evidence suggesting that there were indeed a few signs of struggle within the house.
And we can see the lamp on top of the nightstand, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Fair to say this lamp has been knocked over, right?
Yes.
And we also see the sound machine hanging down between the nightstand and the bed, right?
Correct.
During the questioning about the murder weapon, Detective Benton's testimony brought up a pivotal moment in the trial.
What type of firearm was it?
It was a .40 caliber semi-automatic.
Benton stated her belief that the gun could hold 12 bullets. However, 9 shell casings were found at the scene, and the gun still had 4 bullets left in it, totaling 13 bullets. Benton concluded that Victoria must have reloaded the gun during the incident, a detail she had previously shared with the cameras.
The gun doesn't hold 13. For some reason, this girl, she did a tactical reload.
In reality, the gun had a capacity of 13 bullets from the start. This revelation was crucial because, according to Benton's theory, Victoria reloading the firearm would imply premeditation, undermining her claim of self-defense. Despite Palmer's strong criticism of this error, Detective Benton maintained that this mistake did not alter the overall conclusion of the case.
You recognize now that the maximum capacity of this weapon is 13, right?
No, I realize that.
You didn't write that in your report?
No, I did not.
Weren't you wrong about the reloading?
No, I was not.
At this moment, you have no evidence she reloaded.
No.
You just can't say that you made a mistake.
I don't believe I did.
The prosecution sought to depict Victoria as a manipulative individual who used her physical appeal to entice men and manipulate them into fulfilling her desires. To bolster their argument, they called Jeremy Fordham to the stand, a former acquaintance of Victoria's, to whom she had previously sent explicit pictures.
You're saying that the defendant never sent you pictures of her? No, I didn't think so.
Additionally, County Police Lieutenant Robbie Ray testified that he had engaged in flirtatious text exchanges with Victoria following his assistance with a legal matter she had.
You said,
and you won't need to service me for a little help.
and what was that in reference to?
She stated that William Carter expected her to service him.
Next up on the witness stand was Rick Price, the same deputy who had given her the gun in the first place.
She told me that her ex had beaten her and she needed a protective order. I could see the bruises on her arms. I could also see that she had the outline of black eyes.
When asked about his relationship with Victoria, Price's response was cryptic.
I was interested in Victoria, but we never developed past just good friends.
Did you ever have sexual relations with her then?
No.
Did you ever tell anyone that you did?
I've told people all sorts of things that had nothing to do with reality.
It's worth noting that Price was the first person Victoria contacted after the shooting, even before calling 911. This raised suspicions about Victoria's influence over men. Adding to the intrigue, Price was terminated from his previous job just 5 days after William Carter's murder, reportedly due to his lack of cooperation with the investigation. The prosecution contended that Victoria deliberately led William to his demise that fateful night. They also argued that Victoria's multiple shots at William were excessive and constituted overkill.
She finishes him off from behind, and the final shot is to his head.
In contrast, the defense asserted that Victoria acted out of fear for her life when William unexpectedly showed up at her house and assaulted her.
Will Carter is on top of Victoria Rickman, raping her, and she gets the gun out and hits him.
Palmer also played Victoria's emotional 911 call, suggesting that it reflected genuine fear and helplessness.
I begged him not to hurt me. I just want him to be okay. He's not. There's just blood everywhere.
According to the defense, Victoria felt utterly defenseless during the assault by William, leading her to use the weapon in a desperate attempt to protect herself.
Imagine how powerless she felt when William Carter, who was taller than her, heavier than her, and stronger than her, was her.
However, the prosecution alleged that in the past, Victoria had made similar accusations against some people, and had also threatened to make false allegations against a few others. To reinforce this argument, they called William Plunkett, Victoria's former roommate, to the witness stand. Plunkett testified that Victoria had threatened him when he attempted to evict her from his residence.
She told me that if I called the police officers, she would tell them that I tried to beat her and tried to rape her.
The defense also called Victoria's friends to the stand, who testified to seeing bruises on Victoria's body on previous occasions.
The bruising was kind of, almost looked like fingerprints on the side.
I've seen bruises on her arm. I've seen a black eye. I have seen a mark above her eye, right about here.
And where did she have the bruises on her body?
On the wrists and her arms, and then the second occasion on the throat.
Victoria's friend Brittany recalled an incident where she witnessed Victoria receiving an angry phone call from William just months before the murder.
He was very angry and just yelling and screaming. I could hear bits and pieces of the conversation because he was screaming so loudly.
What was Miss Rickman's demeanor after that?
It completely changed. Her whole attitude, her face, facial expressions changed, just like she's seen a ghost.
Additionally, the defense presented William's psychiatrist, Dr. John Lockridge, who made a startling revelation. He stated that just 3 days before his death, William reported experiencing delusions.
He said he thought he was famous, he was on TV, he was talking to and through the TV.
Lockridge also testified that William had been prescribed an antidepressant to aid his sleep. However, because Detective Benton had failed to request a toxicology report, it remained unknown what drugs William had in his system on the night of his murder, and whether they could have influenced his mental state. The defense claimed that on the night William Carter died, he stormed into Victoria's house in a fit of jealousy after catching her chatting with another guy on the phone earlier that day.
He is angry at her. That's how he was feeling that night. He was lashing out at her.
Defense attorney Palmer even read out furious texts William had sent to Victoria just hours before his death.
You're sad, scary, and a horrible person who I tried and continue to try to love and respect, but it's impossible. You're vicious and horrible to me, and all you want to do is blame me.
While the defense had some valid points, the prosecution came prepared with their own ammunition, dropping a few bombshells as the trial unfolded. It came to light that just months before the trial began, Detective Kevin Leonpacker cracked the code on one of Victoria's cell phones, unearthing a treasure trove of information.
And came across a piece of paper that said phone code, and it had a 4-digit code on it. And the investigator punched it into the phone, and poof, it opened right up.
The phone yielded over 66,000 texts, totaling some 4,000 pages of messages sent and received by Victoria. This wealth of data helped investigators piece together a timeline of events on the night of September 13, 2013. Earlier that evening, Victoria informed Andrew Scarr, her lifelong friend and the owner of the house where she was staying, that she wanted to be alone and asked him to stay at his mother's house. After he departed, Victoria spoke with William on the phone. Although the contents of their conversation remained unknown, it was determined that William showed up at the house sometime after midnight. Detectives also discovered a series of photos in Victoria's possession documenting her bruises, all taken just a day before the murder occurred.
I looked at the metadata on the photos to see when were these photos taken, and that's when I found they were 24 hours before the murder ever occurred. This is her whole defense. This is her whole assertion of self-defense, of justification for shooting and killing Will. And those bruises existed before he ever showed up at her house that night.
There was some evidence indicate that maybe the injuries she actually had 24 hours before. Isn't that really damaging for your case?
Not at all, not really damaging. She had other bruises that were notated, on her body in the medical records.
Leonpacker also disclosed that William's text to Victoria displayed his fury over her contacting his ex-wife. William had even texted Victoria, indicating his decision to end their relationship. Leonpacker read one of these texts aloud during the court proceedings.
You are too dangerous to be around. Never contact me or the mother of my child again.
In one of these messages, William also mentioned his intention to pursue criminal charges against Victoria for the May 2013 incident. The prosecution speculated that Victoria may have been concerned that an assault conviction would impact her custody rights regarding her son. Right after this, Victoria began sending increasingly desperate texts to her friend, Deputy Sheriff Rick Price, expressing her apprehensions about William. However, the defense countered by highlighting how around this same time, William referred to Victoria as the love of his life and expressed a desire to reconcile their relationship. But the cell phone didn't just contain text and photos. It also held a video that served as a startling piece of evidence.
Go, Tori.
Do it.
Go.
Do it.
I don't want to do anything but get you out of here, dude.
As it turned out, in May 2013, when Victoria allegedly showed up unannounced at William's house and refused to leave, she had recorded a video of their heated altercation on her own cell phone. This footage depicted Victoria attempting to re-enter William's home mere moments after alleging she had been assaulted by him.
Why are you naked? Who were you on the phone with?
We know one thing for sure. He wasn't naked because he raped her, because why would she have to ask that question?
The prosecution presented the entirety of the 60-second video, arguing that it did not depict the interaction one would expect between a woman who had just been assaulted and the alleged perpetrator.
You just showed up at my house, and I told you not to be here.
I did not. You told me to come here.
Tori, I didn't tell you to be here. Get out of here, dude. I'm scared of you. You terrify me. You're already doing this. Get out of here.
Why are you acting like this? Right now, open the door. You is upstairs.
No, it's not.
All my stuff
There's
is upstairs.
nothing upstairs. All you are is a toxic web of lies. Stop it.
Stop.
Get off of me.
Stop.
I'm not letting you in my house.
If you do this,
I'm gonna call the police.
Do it.
By showcasing this video, the prosecution sought to undermine Victoria's declaration that William had assaulted her on the night of his murder, casting doubt on the credibility of her self-defense claim.
That's one of the things that you heard from the beginning from Will's mouth himself. You are a toxic web of lies.
As the 2-week trial drew to a close, both sides delivered impassioned closing statements. Prosecutor Sheila Ross pulled no punches, asserting that Victoria was not a victim of abuse, but rather a cold, calculated murderer.
She finished him off with a shot to the head. That is cold-blooded murder.
And if he in fact was her and she shot him, good riddance. The world could use one less.
Defense attorney Amanda Palmer, however, remained steadfast in her argument, insisting that Victoria acted in self-defense out of fear for her life. She emphasized that Victoria couldn't have planned the events as she didn't know William was coming over.
Victoria Rickman is not guilty. There is zero proof that Victoria Rickman invited Will Carter to her house.
Palmer concluded her statement by once again criticizing Detective Summer Benton's handling of the investigation.
She wanted to know what's the capacity of the gun, and she got it wrong. She was trying to make good TV, and she didn't want to do anything or take any steps in her investigation that would contradict her theory that Victoria Rickman was guilty.
On September 1st, 2017, after less than an hour of deliberation, the jury reached a guilty verdict.
Count 1, malice murder. We, the jury, find the defendant, Victoria Rickman, guilty.
And sure enough, it was justice for those seeking closure for William Carter.
I think that their verdict, the swiftness in which they rendered their verdict, speaks for itself.
When the verdict was read, there was a huge rainbow that came over Atlanta. To me, that was Will. He was finally at peace.
A month later, on October 5th, 2017, 34-year-old Victoria returned to court for her sentencing hearing. This time, Victoria, who had chosen not to testify during the trial, addressed the court, hoping for leniency.
I'm a mother who has been stolen from her son's life. I'm a battered woman. I am a victim who continues to suffer the nightmares and symptoms of PTSD caused from being forced to defend myself in years of abuse. So I ask you, Your Honor, return me my son in my life. Give me back my voice and my dignity.
Yet she offered no apology to William's family, and in return, Judge J.P. Boulay offered no mercy, sentencing her to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
This court sentences you to life without the possibility of parole.
In an exclusive phone interview from prison with Crime Watch Daily after her sentencing, Victoria slammed the justice system.
It's a complete slap in the face to me as a domestic violence survivor and a disgrace to all battered women, sexual assault, and domestic violence victims that now the system can actually use my case as a tool to re-violate the real victims and their rights.
She insisted that she was no murdering seductress, as the media labeled her.
There are no words to describe how it feels to be labeled as something you're not. All this slander and lies about me is beyond devastating. This entire botch case was solely based on fabricated assumptions created for fame and publicity by defaming my character, maliciously spinning anything, everything into something it wasn't.
She didn't shy away from expressing disdain for the decisions made by the jury and judge.
I've always told the truth of the abuse I've endured. My stories never changed. I think they didn't take anything into consideration or put themselves in my shoes even.
Furthermore, Victoria affirmed her determination to continue fighting for a new trial. On October 12, 2017, Victoria made a legal maneuver, filing a motion for a new trial, citing claims of ineffective counsel during her initial trial. However, following a hearing, the trial court rejected her motion on June 14, 2019. Undeterred, Victoria pursued an appeal, but her efforts were met with disappointment when the Supreme Court denied her appeal on June 16, 2020. As per prison records, Victoria remains incarcerated at Pulaski State Prison in Hawkinsville, Georgia, with little prospect of freedom anytime soon. Reflecting on the tragedy, William Carter's mother expressed profound grief, acknowledging the deep impact of William's death on all who knew him. However, she lamented the most significant loss was felt by William's daughter, whose life was forever altered by the untimely death of her father.
She's a good student. She's got a beautiful heart. Never see her graduate and never, be at her wedding. But his memories is what's important. And that's what I want to be able to carry on and be grateful that I had this young man in my life.